Like Dojack's was loaded with neon on the outside. Like, I'll tell you what happened with the sign. Like, I didn't own the sign originally. Curtis, that owned the Blue Note, owned it. He bought it off of Dojack's. And I restored it or redid it and painted it probably 20 years ago. And it hung on the Blue Note on Main Street. And then when they closed, I took both of the signs down and kept them. And then when he reopened, we put the other one back up. But at that point, I just said, forget it. You're not getting it back. I'm keeping it. And, you know, there it is. So my plan is to actually repaint it red and letter it Dojack's and restore it to its original state.
My grandfather was somewhat of a legend. When he was selling books, he did it out of a horse and buggy. He started the store in 1904 on Selkirk Avenue, and then it moved to Dufferin in Maine, and then it moved to a building that my grandfather renovated at Henry in Maine, 660 Main Street. Not being able to speak English, my grandfather sold books and eventually bought a bookstore and then developed a printing press and printed his own books in 12 different languages. It was specifically a Winnipeg kind of thing. And what's funny is my grandfather expanded the business and we started music stores in Regina, Edmonton, and Vancouver. And that degree of ethnicity was never required in any other music store in Canada. So those lines of selling books and language newspapers and language cards and baptismal certificates and all the silly things that we sold at our music store with watches and jewelry and repairs to televisions. And I mean, those things were unheard of any other music store in the world, I would think. People that came to this country were very grateful to my grandfather for having started that business on Main Street. He gave a lot to the community, but I never knew him. He had a stroke when he was in Toronto and came back home. He felt he should go to the hospital. And so when they took him to the hospital, he wanted to pass by the store. And a touching story that my father told me is he waved goodbye to the store and died the next day. That was the story of my grandfather. I think it changed in the 60s with the Beatles. All of a sudden we found ourselves, I mean, we had sold electric guitars and stuff, but that all changed, and we tried to address a more modern market. Along with Elvis Presley and every other record that was popular in the 50s and 60s, we also sold all these country fiddle things. And my father had a Sunday night radio program on CKRC, I think, which broadcast, it was called the Old Time Music Hour or something like that. At one point it was probably what I would have called as a kid, too ethnic. The sign was huge, but my father maintained that sign right to the day he died. They ripped down the old Eaton's livery stable at King and Henry and built feed-right mills there, and that brought a lot of pigeons. And then the pigeons lived in the signs, and they would bring nails that would short-circuit the signs, and we had endless grief after that with our signs shorting out because of the pigeons. It's kind of frustrating that politicians over the years did nothing on Main Street. And then came along the Portage Avenue thing, and there wasn't even enough money for a coat of paint on Main Street. So there came a time when certain people wouldn't come to Main Street because of the hotels, and our business was always good till my father's decision, well, my father's ultimate death, but my mother's decision to sell the store. I mean, Main Street was, what was it called? An international bazaar. It was a happening street. And my grandfather was the mayor of the street.